G'day everyone, it's James Davis from the Pax8 Academy again, and this time I've got Nathan from the Pax8 Academy team. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, James. How about you?
Oh, I'm ticking along. We're coming up to the end of the year, and I thought I'd get you on board today to talk about a very important topic that not a whole lot of people are talking about. That's the realities of being a manager in a technology business. And I'm just going to dump you in the deep end straight away so we can get going. And we ask you, you see a lot of managers. You're probably the person that sees the most amount of project and service managers and service coordinators. You name the sort of roles in the APAC region. What do you reckon the skill set level's like?
Pretty varying. Some very, very good, highly confident, and competent, self-directed managers, but also a lot of people that still waiting on a level of permissiveness from owners and managers above them for things that they do. It's an interesting situation that I see a lot of the time where you're kind of having to assess, is it that they have natural inclination to leadership or management, or is it something they need to develop, or is it that they've in the past been really good at doing things while given instructions, and they've worked their way to management in that way. I can't give you a 65% or a 50% or anything like that, but it's one of the things, as you mentioned that question, that I've noticed a lot of lately, is people that have been good at doing work, getting things done, following instructions, being given a manager title because they've achieved well with what they're doing. They might be the most technical person, they might be the most skilled in the team, and I think where management in that space in our region is let down, specifically within our industry, is giving someone the job title manager, and that's it, and that's where it ends. And I see that being one of the areas where there is a big gap.
Why do you think that is? You've been around for a while. I see the same thing.
Yeah. First off, I think there's not a lot of training available, or guidance or mentorship for people around, getting involved in management or leading people, or what skills you need to build on. You kind of pick it up from intuition. You might be driven by what you've seen as previous managers of what was good, what was bad, and what you want to do and what you don't want to do. There's not really a message behind, what you are as a manager and defining your own purpose or your role. And if you don't have someone to coach or train you through that, how are you going to find that yourself? If you want to get better at the technology, you go and do your Azure course, or you go and do your certification, or you set up a lab and you start playing around with it. When you're a manager, you don't have lab situations to try out conflict management or anything like that. So I think the lack of support and leadership comes through, but also from what I've observed and people I work through as well, a lot of the time, founders and managers, founders, owners, senior leaders, often themselves don't have that level of training or experience or guidance. They've started their business because they liked the technology and they thought it was cool and they could do it for cheaper, or they could get more business, or they didn't want to follow orders, or whatever it was that got them to start with. And by proxy, they've grown a business and hired and managed people, and now they're having to pass on their leadership lessons and skills to other people when they might not be particularly well formed themselves, because a lot of the people I've talked to, they started off in service desk or top end level 2 roles. Don't get a lot of one-on-one mentoring or coaching in that space as well. And it's probably one of the reasons why they engage with us as well. But
It's a very good point about the owner and founder. They've built a business. They've had to manage service desk, I use that as an example, or projects in some form of how they've got built their business. And then they've got someone that's got capability, and then they promote them into the role without really getting the right support from what you're telling us. How does that impact the business then?
Indecisiveness is generally one of the first things that starts to come through, and it carries through level to level within the organization. So a manager not knowing if they can make decisions around how we're going to deal with crisis situations like a P1, who we're going to communicate, how we're going to communicate it, what type of messaging, what methods, who we're going to message, contact, and things like that. I've seen it where those aren't dealt with because they need to sign off or agreement from another manager who's more senior, and why extension does as well is it makes it more and more difficult for people to make decisions lower in the levels of, further down in the chain. So the more frontline people as well, they're waiting on it. And as a result of indecisiveness, you end up with inaction, and indecisiveness, and then potentially coupled with a fear of repercussion if you do follow through and do things wrong, can create a big list or a backlog of potential problems that aren't being addressed. Something I've seen a little bit of experience. I've worked in places as well, just around what the expectations are, where your responsibility as you become a manager or responsible for people or responsible for things and outcomes and outputs is, where does my responsibility end versus what do you want to maintain control of, or what should I be following up with you or asking for advice or asking for approval to do these things on.
So it can sort of create grounds the organisation to a halt in a lot of ways, that indecisiveness.
Well, you think about it with like a organisation where you're scoping out pieces of work and everything needs to go through the owner for approval before it gets sent to a client. Why, instead of going with that, why are we not looking at what are we doing that's lacking from the work that we've been doing that needs the owner's approval, so that we can get to the root cause and have it so that we're doing it to a consistent, good level that meets the expectations and requirements of the business without having an additional constraint added into the chain.
Great example there. So you get to, in what you do day to day, you're obviously straddling the fence and helping these sort of problems be solved and grow the organisation. Is it the owner at fault? Is it the leader at fault? Is it a fault game, or is it sort of blind leading the blind?
I think it's a confidence thing. It's a confidence thing in someone new in a role, not really understanding, what their leadership skills are, what their management skills are, their own decision making. They might not have had that responsibility before. They haven't really defined it. They don't really understand it. And then there's a confidence that, the owners, more senior leaders will have as well, of that confidence in that person, understanding that they are in that situation. And sometimes even their confidence just to remove themselves from the situation, because it could be so much more personal to them as well. If I leave this, how bad could this go? This is my name, this is my reputation, this is my business, I've built it up. Are all things that, you have to consider as well.
I think that that point there is, the personal, you're an owner, you live and die by what's going on in your business. And, if you haven't had this sort of management training and experience, you are diving in, you are the one that is holding the bag. So how do we typically break that sort of cycle of, maybe the owner's given responsibility to the service manager. Service manager isn't putting their hand up and communicating and making decisions. They're waiting for the owner, and we're stuck in this sort of limbo. How do we start breaking that cycle?
Talking from the people I've been coaching and from my own experience, a lot of the time what I ended up doing was, rather than asking for advice or asking for how they think things should be done, I would say, I've observed this, I'm going to do this, let me know if there's anything you disagree with. I'm going to do this by 2:00 today, something like that. So I'm giving a time behind it. I've given them an idea of what I'm going to do, might give them an idea of why to start with, but I found the more and more I did it, the less I needed to explain why, and the more trust that I built up. But it was a gradual thing. I think, again, that level of permissiveness that we see a lot of the time of, hey, I want to do this, can you tell me how you'd like it done? You're never going to develop yourself as a manager. You're never going to develop that confidence in your skill from the people who manage or lead you if you're asking them how you should be doing everything, because that should really be something that you can start bringing to the table. So you come in with suggestions, you come in with observations, you can make it easy for them. I used to just say, give me a thumbs up if okay, give me a sad face if no. Example, make it easy for people that are busy. Read this, makes sense, or it's already done. Sorry, you didn't get back to me before 2 p.m. There needs to be some level of initiative there, I think, to start with. But people wanting to have more autonomy, they need to also demonstrate that they can be autonomous. So it's a double-edged sword that you have to continually build over time. Of, I can do the right thing, I make good decisions. Occasionally, I'm going to make bad decisions, but my expectation is you're going to back me in those bad decisions. We'll figure out what went wrong. We'll stop it from happening. That's essentially, I think, the starting point to anything, really. If they're always coming to you to tell them what to do, then you might as well hire an assistant that can do what you tell them to do.
Which I see this as prevalent as well. And I don't know if it's a generational thing from our generation younger, or it's always been the way. Like, I'm not old enough to say longer term trends, but it seems to me more and more people that are stepping up into the manager role are showing less and less initiative, but want full autonomy before they do anything. Then it's clearly psychological of expectations there. So what's the best way that an owner especially can help set up expectations for a new manager of what they need to focus on initially and how they're going to build up that autonomy?
I think a picture of what good looks like, whether that's, you don't have to put KPIs in and that's going to solve everything. And that's another thing that I see a lot of the times is if we say we want 98% CSAT, that's, if we get that, we're fine. Well, you can have 98% CSAT and have a massive backlog of tickets because no one wants to get bad feedback on age calls, as an example. But some clear direction of like what good looks like. Do you have, things like fundamental things like values in your organization that they can align with? Build your team around those values. If they're responsible for building a team, is there alignment from that level? Do they have alignment with you? Do you have alignment with them? Because they're going to be passing down those instructions or the vision, the way that the team operates to align with that. There needs to be, and I'm coming at a complete mind blank at this moment, but there needs to be something there that connects, and that connects from, your business starts and exists for a reason. And I find the further and further down the chain an organization grows, like I've worked in large organizations, the further and further there are multiple levels, the less connection there is. Connection, the people in the organization need to understand what you're about, what it is that you're wanting to achieve, what makes you different, what makes you succeed, what good looks like. People understand that, you know what to work towards as well. Your team knows what to work towards. Everyone's looking in the same direction. I think that's more fundamental. This is why I'm starting to get myself back into cycle. This is where I think it starts working more than the KPIs or the OKRs or anything like that as a starting point. Just, are we actually all looking in the right direction? Are we all looking in the same direction? Do we all have the same or similar philosophy? Do we know what we want to achieve? Do we know what good looks like for our clients? Do we know what good looks like for us? Can we talk about it? Could I ask someone and they could explain it? Would it be the same as what I'm seeing? Would it be similar? Everyone will have different personalities or values themselves, but do we understand what we're here for? Particularly with younger generations, understanding purpose, you would have seen as well, it's a really important part towards this. I think if you've got that as a starting point, and then you can start setting those KPIs or those directions around, what we want to do, or OKRs, customer satisfaction is great for us. So what we like to see is that 90% or 98% CSAT. To get to there, we need to do these things to start achieving it. At the same time, I don't want to see us having a backlog of tickets growing and growing to get around and work around that effect. So it becomes a little bit more complicated when we start talking around the KPIs, but let's set in a general idea and an agreement of what good looks like, and let them know what the parameters are for them to operate within. So, to achieve that 98% CSAT, I think you can do pretty much anything you want. You can change the structure of your team. You can change how anything works. If that was what they said, that's a decision that they should stand by, regardless if it works out or doesn't work out as well.
It's a really good point about the connection and the purpose. And for a lot of businesses, they can't quite articulate that yet. But what you said there that I took away is you can't just rock up to a new manager and go, just make service better, will you? And then walk away.
Yeah.
This is balanced starting point. So I'm curious what you just sort of left off there with, here's CSAT, go do what you like. How, from your experience and seeing the wider industry, what would be your comfortability of most people that are new managers, new service managers, as an example, to actually be able to go and drive an initiative like that?
I think that comes down to that's something that does come down more to individual and the hunger of that individual to do things, which with somewhere I've, because we've been talking through these things and have those conversations, and I'll have the conversation with the GM or the owner around, we want to make service better. And I'll say, what does service better look like to you? And let's start from there. With it, again, it goes back to that thing around building that skill and building that confidence and building the competencies to do it. You could tell someone to do something, but some people are going to need more instructions. It's just a case of, what is that goal, and do you have, a well-defined picture? Let's say you want someone to build your house. Do you know that you want 4 bedrooms, you want it to look like this, and you want it to be facing this direction? Or are you just saying, just build me a house, and you go and see the house and you go, oh, well, it's a house, but it's not the house I wanted. I think part of that is how setting that direction. How descriptive do you want to be? How important is it to you? Because if it's not important to you and you're not talking about what the things that are important, they're not going to take those things as important as well. And you could tell them to go and do it, and they could go and achieve it. And they could achieve it from their perspective of what they want to do. But if it doesn't line up, then you need it to be more not prescriptive with how to do it or how to get there, but prescriptive with what you wanted, or more descriptive with what you wanted.
Yeah. I'm sorry, my sort of context into this too, like having worked with a lot of owners and mentored a lot of up-and-coming managers, the biggest challenge that I see is that gap between the owners do want to do the right thing and give them autonomy, but they can't quite describe that what good looks like because they don't actually know.
Yeah.
And the other side, we've spoken about the indecisiveness, but a lot of those managers don't actually know how to pull the levers and what even the levers are for something like CSAT,
sure.
right? So
absolutely,
I think from that and what you've just explained with that more detail is you need to start from a different place. Don't start with those assumptions of, well, this is what I'm expecting, and they'll just my leader will just magically feel it. It goes back to what you're saying before around creating that support network for people, and that hasn't existed. So what sort of support do people actually need when they're coming in as a new manager?
I think the point really that I was getting towards before is it's a conversation rather than a directive with some of these things. So that conversation, we've had conversations in the past. I've had conversations on tech where you don't really know what the root cause is or what you're wanting to achieve. You have to ask, open, closed-ended questions and start to build that picture. It's the same with, pretty much any industry, any type of role. It's having that conversation around, we want to fix service. Well, what's wrong with service? What isn't working? What's broken? What would you like to see done better? What things are we doing well that we should, actually acknowledge and, pass on good feedback to the team, or, celebrate the wins and successes, build up some morale, and go from there. Figure things out as you go. Sometimes it is a case of figuring things out as you go. And that's why I was saying sometimes that is down to the individual. If they're hungry, they're interested. A manager said that I want to get CSAT up, and they want me to get CSAT up because it's important that we have good relationships with our clients and we're using it within our marketing or whatever it is that we need to do. Cool, I've got an idea, I've got a purpose. What's the worst thing I can do? I can go and Google 100 different articles around how to improve CSAT, start having a look at the supporting metrics, have a look at things, training courses, learning, read articles, go on Reddit, lots of different places to get resources, play around with some things, find other people in similar roles or who have done similar roles, ask them, bounce ideas off them as well. That support network, people you're working with, the manager themselves, or the owner, leader of the manager, making sure that they're making themselves available for some of those questions. But again, not to the point where they're dependent on them for every decision. So having some scheduled one-on-one time, a half an hour each week or 15 minutes a day or whatever it is. One place, a couple of people actually that I've been working with, they're bringing on new managers or elevating people to management, 15 minutes a day. Every morning, how'd yesterday go? What are you working on today? Here's some things I need you to look at. Here's what I want you to do, et cetera, et cetera. But again, more in a loose direction of these things need to be achieved. I don't have the time for doing them and I want you to start doing them. and we'll talk about it tomorrow, see how you got on. Having that regular cadence, making sure that you're available. Like I said, I think where it tends to fall off is when someone gets given a manager title and now you got to manage these people, you got no idea about how to manage people. You're all of a sudden having to manage relationships and conflict resolution and stuff within the team or within clients. Your relationship within the team changes itself. You're one of the peers, maybe in the past, you're one of the guys, one of the team. Now everyone's a little bit different around things as well. The dimensions of the relationships will change as a result.
I'm an owner. Something you tweaked just then. If I'm an owner and I've got a competent person in my team, I'm looking to elevate them to a manager. What sort of qualities should I actually be looking for outside of they're just competent at what they're doing?
I think the best ones I usually see are the people that care, and it's not just around, and that doesn't mean by any means by caring that they're working 60, 70 hours a week, because I did that when I was a senior engineer, and it's not sustainable. And sure, I cared a lot, but I also burnt out a lot quicker than everyone else did, and I don't work at that place anymore. So it's not the thing that you want to see. People that care, people that have a common interests with you and the team as well. I think if you've got people that aren't afraid of challenges, aren't afraid of conflicts, it's a great skill to have, to be able to deal with those occasional crisis scenarios when your client gets cryptoed completely and you've got to go and have that awkward conversation with them. I don't think that they need to be particularly assertive or dominant personality or particularly charismatic or anything like that. But if they're someone who can bring out the best in people around them, isn't afraid of confronting challenges, doesn't have to be the most technical person in the team, but people will listen to them. They tend to be the people I see that come out more as the natural leaders that are the easier decisions. Where it sometimes happens is, this person's really good at following processes, this person's really regimented, this person's really strict what they're doing, we should make them a team lead, and eventually it just crushes the team morale because it's not the right type of person for a lot of those instances as well. I don't think there's one specific personality or type, though, that makes a good leader. I think it's more around how they interact within your organization.
Which I think is a very important point. Your team needs different things. You have different people. You need to identify the strengths and weaknesses. And you highlighted before that someone that will ask questions and challenge things is important. If they're a passenger in their job, they're going to be a passenger in the manager. It's pretty obvious. People aren't going to dramatically change. And you touched on something just before as you were wrapping up. What's better, a technical or a non-technical manager for service desk or projects?
I'd say non-technical. Having been technical myself, I realized pretty quickly on that I was more dangerous being technical than non-technical, particularly as I started getting off the tools. It's helped a couple of times when I've called out bullshitting, but besides that, it's not it's not something I've leveraged day in and day out. So no, I think building up those more of the EQ traits is more important than maintaining or keeping up with the technical points. And that's a conversation I've been having with quite a few service managers that are now in that situation where they need to decide or figure out what it is that they want to do.
And so if maybe you're listening to this conversation and you're thinking about elevating someone up, and maybe we've dissuaded you from maybe the person you're thinking, if you were to go to market, ideally you should be able to elevate, but if you don't have that person, which we see a lot of the time in a lot of organizations, what sort of person are you looking for? Like you just said, non-technical, but expand on that a little bit. What sort of qualities and stuff are we actually looking for?
This itself comes down to the role. Like if you're looking for a team leader and they're going to be technical on the tools, you're probably looking for a good systems engineer, really likes what they do, but likes the mentoring and coaching side of things. If you're looking for a service manager, are you looking for a service manager to build and establish a new team because you've never had someone working in that role? In which case, you're kind of looking for someone who has already done that or similar, or you're looking for someone who you can elevate internally, who can do it because they'll understand your business, understand what you're wanting to do, what you're wanting to do, and they might need to join a peer group or external type of thing to help them build their skills up more quickly. You might look at people from service delivery type roles in larger organizations, but again, they're usually the type of people that have been given a pretty clear function and pretty clear remit of the role, and they're just going in and doing the things, write the reports, deal with the escalations, go and meet with the clients, go and meet with the other providers. They may not be the right people to start foundation of a team as well. Couple of things I'd say, dedicated or interested in study. They haven't just done iTool Foundation and left it there. They've maybe done a little bit more. They would be curious. They should ask you questions when you're interviewing them. They'll want to know a little bit more around culture and your why and your purpose. Make sure that your interviews are two-way conversations rather than one. Make sure that you're giving them the opportunity to ask questions, and they listen to the standard of questions that they're asking you as well. They should have attention to detail, be relatively good at coordinating themselves. You want them to be on time for the interview, as an example, particularly if you're going to have them coordinating or organizing a whole bunch of other people. Able to identify improvements quickly. Generally, talking with an organization, you can usually unpick 2 or 3 things you can improve within the first, I'd say, 20 to 30 minutes of having a conversation with them just by asking the right questions. Look for someone who can do that, and you'll probably be off to a pretty good start.
Keeping that in mind, I'll flip it. What don't you want as sort of like a service manager, project manager level?
Someone coming into an interview and telling you how they can fix all your company's problems without talking to you about it and understanding your organization first. Be the first one. People who can't have conversations. Conversations are really important to leadership. And by conversations, I mean deeper, more difficult conversations, as well as showing an interest. Like, are they showing an interest in you? Are they showing an interest in your company? Are they showing an interest in the people that they're interviewing? Were they polite and good to talk to? If you had a receptionist, greet them. Those types of things, because particularly in that management role, it really is going to be the glue that holds your company together. Not just within connection within your own organization, but connection to your clients as well. So the few things that I'd say to look out straight off the bat is, I've looked at you, I've had one conversation with you, I know how I'm going to fix everything in your organization, because it's never that easy.
So assuming we found the right person with the right qualities, what would, I know this is a very generic, vague question, but what is typically the success criteria for a service manager and project manager? What would you be setting out for someone new in a typical organization?
Well, you're making sure, for instance, that your service team is on track with their kind of standard KPIs, response rates and SLA targets are being met and other things like that. Service gross margin, something that a lot of service managers don't even have visibility of. Are you actually making business money as a department of your organization? So, I'd say as a general rule, at least 50% or more should be a target that you're reaching. Go with some of those things as a starting point. Here's some fundamental measurements and targets that you have to meet. How are you going to meet them? Well, we've got the people here. We should be meeting them. If we aren't, let's work together to figure it out. Let you drive most of it, but come to me for input, advice, context, history, all those types of things. Attrition rates is an interesting thing, and I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are on that. Like attrition rates across your level ones, example. Larger organization, you'd expect more attrition rates because you got more people in. What level of attrition rate is actually good for a service desk? Because you should expect higher, right? You don't want your entire level 1 team being level 1s for the next 20 years, because you'll have a whole bunch of most likely unfulfilled people.
I got a question off the back of that. You're talking about these success metrics and stuff, and completely agree. And what happens if you don't have them in place? What if you're not actually measuring them? From my experience, the majority of the industry isn't measuring a whole lot, or they're measuring the real basics.
We could start with, are you closing out enough tickets that you're not getting escalations from your clients? If we're going with really basic levels, is your team working a certain amount of hours a day? Is your team happy? Are your clients happy? Implementing CSAT's really quite easy to do. in any type of ticketing system. As long as you've got something, a lot of them will be built in. Start gathering staff satisfaction and feedback, make it anonymous, collect that over a period of time once you've come in versus 3 months, 6 months, 12 months down the line. If you're keeping your people happy and your people feel engaged and are enjoying their work, by nature, their work will usually be better as a result. So yeah, really, if we go in there, I'd start with the people management side. Start with, are they having an effect on the team? When it comes to measuring things outside of, like, I tend to go to gross margin because it's pretty easy. You know, how much money did you bring in versus how much did you spend across your service department? That's where it starts getting, again, a little more hard to read, and you can end up with like vanity metrics or just busy work metrics as well. So, you know, I don't want to focus on things like number of documents created for documentation or anything like that. It's not going to provide a lot of value. Start with, is your team happy? Are you getting through tickets better? Are you getting through them faster? You could look at some baselining over a period of time, relatively easy as well. Export all the tickets. How long do you spend on them? As long as you're getting time in. If they're not getting time in, that could be one of the first things you do as a manager is, I want to see you getting all of the team, 70% of their time in for the week. Start there, add another 10%, et cetera, et cetera.
So if we circle back to where we sort of started in this conversation, that's probably where the difficulty comes in, right? Like if we don't actually know what good looks like, and we've got our manager that's sort of expecting to walk into a more structured environment that they can run with, and the owner is expecting them to actually build it, but neither of them know what good looks like.
Sure.
No one really knows where to start. So what I'm taking away from your sorry, you go.
Oh, the first point, if you don't know what good looks like, and you don't know what good is within your organization, just make everything visible, make the bad visible, make the good visible, and actually have a picture of where you're starting from. Because I've seen that as well, where there is no visibility in the organization. Everything's based off assumption of, we probably do those in 3 days. Well, actually you don't, you do them in 7 days, and you might be annoyed at that, but that's the reality of what it is. Now that we know where you are, we can work on how to get that better.
This probably goes back to what you were alluding to in the earlier piece of treating this as a continual improvement journey for the person and the organization and the department at the same time. That starts with the owner's expectation of what's actually gonna happen. So I'm curious from your perspective and your own journey, if you were to chuck a new person in that is a first time leader, this is their first time managing people, what's the sort of typical journey for someone to go from being not confident, not understanding it, to probably mastering the current role and then being ready for the next step up? Is that like a 6-month process, or how long is it typically from what you've seen?
I don't think it's a never-ending process, because you're always going to be dealing with new people, new technology, new things. And I think that's the point with that continual improvement as well. It's not just one and done thing. I guess the first foundational things are like making sure that they're getting the support, they're getting the direction that you need them to have. It doesn't mean telling them how to do everything, just what the outcomes are that you want to achieve. Could be certification that you want them to do. If they're involved with Prince 2 for projects, or doing some ITIL across the service management, and you might want them to go a little bit more than foundation, they'll get introduced to a whole lot of different ideas, different things to try and adopt as well. If they've got a growth mindset and they want to continue growing and learning things, you'll go and do that. You'll figure out around a new concept, you'll go look into that. Before you know it, you're looking into value stream mapping and a whole bunch of other different things that you can start applying to your team and the ways that your organization works. You don't want it where it's a 6-month onboarding and great, you're going to be the best manager for the next 4 or 5 years, however long we retain you. It's going to continue to grow and change, and you're going to get used to working with more and more different types of people, different skills, different perspectives, different outcomes. So I can't really specifically say a prescriptive onboarding thing that I'm aware of. Are they at a starting point meeting the status quo? Then are we exceeding the status quo? And what are we going to do once that status quo has been exceeded? What's the next target or goal we're going to set? And that's where using things like OKRs could tie in nicely as well.
From my experience, I'd say it's usually a 4 to 5 year period. Like I'm speaking generic here. Like the
Sure.
first 12 months, so they're just
Definitely not
people are
6 months, like you said.
It's not, and
Yeah.
it's probably broken down into thirds. The first third is usually about 12 to 18 months, where people are just getting up to speed of, now I'm a people manager. What does that actually mean? And they're not confident, imposter syndrome, all of that kind of stuff. The next third is very much getting up to speed with what the actual job is, now that they realize what they don't know. And then
you
the
don't
next,
have to be the technical person as well, is a big one in that stage. Because
yeah.
I think with that one, sorry to interrupt, that one, the being the technical person, particularly if you are from a technical background, you've built a lot of your seniority, your knowledge, your identity around being that technical person, and now you have to completely remove it from, well, maybe not completely remove it, but you remove it from yourself. It no longer becomes the defining factor of your skills, and your defining factor across your skills is something that you're not experienced with. That I think is, again, tying back into that psychological point we were talking about before, is a big thing. Sorry.
It's a very good point. No, it's a very good point, because on the flip side, the non-technical person has probably gotten to the point where they've realized that they don't need to be technical either to do the job. So that's that sort of period. And then the last sort of third is them actually feeling like they're in control and they can start making those changes, and they're starting to master the job. Mastery is probably the wrong way to say it, but like they're getting more confident in what they're doing, and they can keep elevating themselves up on that continual improvement journey. And sort of question I've got off the back of this sort of conversation is, are job roles important, and are job titles important when you're looking at this? If I'm a 10-person business, do I put them straight into like a director of service operations role, or how do you usually handle this journey?
Yeah, the like senior vice president of service delivery or something, right? Yeah, like, it has to make sense within the size of your organization and the scheme of things. I think the job title, the job description, all of those things are good to have. Having the title, if you're a manager and you got manager in your title, you want to go to another manager role in a year or two, you want to have that manager in your title because it's going to help you with your career progression. But within your organization, is it going to help you do what you need to do more so than building up the relationships, having those conversations? I would say less so. But it can still, have some weight behind it. And some people will be status driven, and that's fine as well, as long as they're in the general wanting to be a manager for the right reason. But you don't need to have, like the senior director or director of service or anything like that. A service manager, service desk manager, service delivery manager, or, fine points to start with, depending on the size and complexity of your organization. The main things there, again, I think is being more clear on what the outcomes are than the role description or the position description. If you've given them an outcome that you want to achieve and they work towards that outcome and they achieve that outcome and they do it within, a way that everyone's happy, that's good, rather than, I could improve it by doing this thing, but it's not in my job description or in my job title. I think, especially when you're in a organization where you're establishing or building something, starting something from you, adding on to something that you never had before, you want to have that aspect of fluidity with it as well.
I think I'd add, you're better off starting low and giving people promotions and increases in salaries and stuff as well, like along that journey. We've covered a lot. Very important topic. We could spend days going in and out of all of this, and I've unfairly put you on the spot to answer very generic, high-level questions for the industry and solve all the world's problems. So what do you want people to take away from the session? If they were to take one or two clear things from today, what would they take away? And if you're getting started, what's the first sort of next action that people should walk away from this session and actually execute on?
The key takeaway, if you're new into a management role, is come with suggestions, look at ways you can improve them, and then be able to explain them, describe them, talk them through with, your own managers, your own leaders, or your owners of your business. Don't be a passenger in your journey. make sure that you're helping to write and define the story that you're gonna, and the path that you're gonna walk. If you are appointing a new manager, make sure you're supporting them. Make sure that they understand what's expected. Make sure they understand the parameters that they can operate within. I often find a big disconnect there is the people who have historically managed from positional power, wanting people that they manage to manage from positional power, but actually giving them no power at the same time, and it creates a weird standby, which just kills morale. Those would be my two things for each side. And on top of that, actionable things, I think, for both ends, just having the conversation to start with, to outline those things, and having a dedicated ongoing conversation, you to your manager, to your owner, and also to people within your team, so that you're also handing over that same level of respect. And those conversations don't need to be in a boardroom, in a meeting room, notes taken. They can just be going for a coffee and a chat, getting out, going for a walk. I used to do that all the time, and it was actually a good way for us to have a change of perspective as we went out and talked as well. Most of the time when I'm giving out advice, it's usually have conversations and talk, though, because that's where you're going to find the common ground and where you're aligned and misaligned.
I think that's an excellent point to wrap up on, and that ask each other questions. It's a two-way street in this, and that's how it's going to be a successful journey for the organisation, the owner, and the leader over a longer period of time. So thank you so much for joining today, Nathan. I hope all the listeners and viewers take something away today and actually go out and execute on it. It's a super important topic to the industry sort of needs to solve. So thank you for that.
All right, cool. Cheers.